Hello everybody, I am not dead yet, and yeah, my nose is a little bit messed up. If you're wondering what happened, well, I got headbutt. Follow me both on Instagram and on TikTok. Both are at OneNotDeadYet1. But today I am talking about Larry Wheels. You know him, I know him, and it seems like a few people are talking about him. Notably, Greg Doucette and Geoff Schofield. So what basically happened was Larry Wheels had a few interesting comments to say about the magic pills or the steroids that he takes. I'll roll the clip now.
Arm wrestling is a marathon, and I've learned maybe the hard way that there are no shortcuts to becoming a pro world-class arm wrestler. And it's not like weightlifting or bodybuilding where you literally do take a magic pill and within a few months you can have a world-class physique or break a world record in a squat, bench, or deadlift.
And Greg seemed to take issue with that. He basically said that, hey, talking about steroids in such a way kind of idealizes them and could encourage young, impressionable teenagers to take PEDs or steroids with the hopes of achieving their dream physiques as well as their world-class record numbers in powerlifting. Whereas Joffrey took this a bit more of a reserved approach, saying, yeah, like, sure, what he said was still kind of imprudent, but at the same time, it was clear that he was referring to himself. He never really said, oh, you should go do these are amazing. I have a more middle-of-the-road approach because I actually quite agree with what Larry says, because I think Larry has been saying something that I've been saying for a long time, and that is there is no PED to gain skill. What does this mean? Well, I'm going to talk more as a boxer here because boxing is a very dynamic and ever-changing sport. Throughout the match, there are just a ton of things that ever change. Things like strength, speed, stamina, skill set, mindset, and control over your opponents. All of these things are things that factor into what you're doing in a boxing match and could change at the tip of a hat and completely turn the tide of a match. And I see it as someone who's never competed in professional or even amateur official arm wrestling matches. I see it very similarly. The two sports are individualistic sports. However, you're going up against another person, and that other person is trying to one-up you. You are both in sort of a deadlock, and the ultimate goal is to get one up and best the other person in that deadlock. Whereas sports like bodybuilding and powerlifting are much, much, much more individualistic and a lot more fixed. Sure, there is room for adjustments and you do change your strategy a little bit, but ultimately in something like powerlifting, once you find the optimal bar pathway for you, basically just repeat that, drill it into muscle memory, and do not deviate from it. Same thing with bodybuilding. With bodybuilding, you have a set number of poses that you have to do, and you literally practice out a posing routine as well. And nobody's really trying to screw with you while you do those things. No one's going to try and push you over while you're doing a deadlift, and no one's going to try and run in and trip you while you're doing your posing routine on stage. However, in these deadlock individualistic-esque sports, you actively have someone working against you to screw with your game plan, and you are constantly trying to one-up each other, which forces the necessity of adaptation, and that is a skill that can be learned. Right? Remember Mike Tyson's famous quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. I've never heard a bodybuilder say, everyone has a posing routine until someone tries to push me over. Right? It just doesn't happen. And that doesn't necessarily mean that in these deadlock-esque individualistic sports, you shouldn't have a game plan. I think it's important to have a game plan, but you also need to be willing to adapt and change your game plan up on the fly. That is one of the markers of a great boxer and one of the true defining characteristics of a high ring IQ. And there are moments in boxing where you do train specific patterns, much like you would train bar pathways in powerlifting. Think of it like this, right? When you're throwing punches, generally speaking, you have your hands up, straight in, straight out, elbow in, right, back to your face, right? You drill that in for hours upon hours upon hours upon hours, much like you would a deadlift. But in boxing, once you do that, you still are not done. That's just the beginning. That is your foot in the door. Once you are able to do that, then the real thinking starts, because once you master the basics, you can start to toy with them. And I'm a big believer in train the basics up until the point where you can ignore them. And once you can do that, that is when true boxing begins. And I believe that it's got to be the same thing with not powerlifting, with arm wrestling, excuse me. That like there are obviously certain tricks and tips that you can do in an arm wrestling match that don't rely purely on brute strength. There are things you can do to tire out your opponent's arm, to rest if you are tired, to unnerve your opponent, etc., etc. And I trained a girl who was working to be a powerlifter, and I was teaching her how to box, and that was one thing she just had a lot of trouble wrapping her head around. She didn't understand to what point you needed to train your punches. She got bored throwing the same 2 punches every day after about a week, despite the fact that she had been training the same lifts every day, or every split or whatever, for like the past couple months. And the reason why is because progression is very different in those 2 sports. With powerlifting, you can still progress with weights on the bar, despite the fact that you're literally doing these same movements every time you go in there, right? There's still progression there, whereas with boxing, you are doing the same movement over and over again to the point where you no longer have to think about it. And then once it becomes pure muscle memory, you do not think about it at all. Then you start to play with it. But in order to get to that point where you can toy with it, it takes a long ass time. And you are continuously ever tweaking as you go along, but at the end of the day, it is still the exact same movement. 50 punches for each, or 50 punches each time for each punch is boring. It's like 15 minutes of standing in the mirror doing the exact same thing over and over again. It's not very stimulating, but sometimes you just have to put in that boring work to get to the point where you can start doing the exciting stuff. And I think that's what Larry Wheels was trying to say, was that there is no PED for skill. You can take PEDs to make you stronger. You can take PEDs to give you a better physique. You can take PEDs to make you faster, but you cannot take a PED that makes you suddenly way more skilled. And sure, the general average person probably won't take PEDs and do what Larry Wheels can do. Larry Wheels is a freak of nature. We all know that. But you can take a freak of nature like Larry Wheels, and if you put him in a boxing ring, if he doesn't know how to box, I don't, for all you know, maybe he's also a great boxer, I doubt it. But if you take someone like Larry Wheels, insane genetics, freak of nature, doesn't know how to box, he's a completely shit boxer, and you put him in the ring with somebody who's been boxing their entire life, who actually knows how to box, 99 times out of 100, the freak of nature who doesn't know how to box, who is on every PD imaginable, will get his head caved in. I mean, sure, there's obviously going to be that odd time where a lucky punch or whatever, but 99 times out of 100, the guy's getting beat. Just like how Larry Wheels wasn't able to defeat the arm wrestlers. And I'm not saying that the arm wrestlers aren't on PEDs. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Again, I don't know the sport of arm wrestling all that much. But what I'm trying to say is that at the end of the day, in compared to sports like that, the PEDs will not be what take you from someone just starting out or average or even slightly above average to insane. Whereas in bodybuilding or in powerlifting, it can. Not necessarily saying it will, it can. And again, I'm a big advocate of people staying natural. I do not believe people should take PEDs at all. But I also do think that depending on how you look at it, that could also be discouraging PEDs, depending on what you want to do. Yeah, I want to become a world-class arm wrestler, but the PEDs are not going to be what is going to get you there. Yeah, sure, they can help. Like Greg says, it just makes you stronger in this movement, but not in this movement. Okay, yeah, that's obviously BS, but you still have to put in the insane amount of hours to acquire the specific skill set of that sport. And I'm not saying that powerlifters or bodybuilders don't do that. What they do is a completely different skill set and a completely different mindset to something like boxing or or arm wrestling. And I think that is the realization that hit Larry Wheels in the face, was, okay, I'm going to have to do things differently than what I've done my entire life. The mentalities, the training, and everything that I have done my entire life that has made me so amazing, that has made me Larry Wheels, I can't do that if I want to be amazing at powerlifting. I'm going to have to take that, throw it out the window, and completely reassess what I'm doing, which is why I think he talks about it being a marathon, not a sprint. Because for Larry Wheels, the PEDs worked amazing, and he was able to get an incredible physique and incredible numbers thanks to the PEDs. But he realized that even with the PEDs, he's still not where he needs to be to compete in arm wrestling. And that is what I'm trying to say. Same thing with boxing. Like, if you are a shit boxer, you can take all the PEDs you want, you are probably still going to get beat. Especially if you are up against someone who has been doing it way longer and who is in the same weight class. That's just my view on things. It's Larry Wheels realizing that the skill set he cultivated and all the experiences he gained through his bodybuilding and powerlifting days don't help him as much as he thought they would. Same thing with the PEDs.
Here is not going to make an extremely big difference, or I should say, give you a shortcut into becoming a great arm wrestler. For example, my first few months in arm wrestling, I was benching 300 kg, squatting and pulling over 400 kg, yet made no difference on the table. How strong I was in these heavy compound movements made no difference how strong my biceps were, because any decent arm wrestler, when I first started arm wrestling the first 6 months, would pin me no problem. A year ago, the way I was pulling versus the way I'm pulling now has changed significantly, where previously, at that time, I was doing zero arm wrestling training, meaning no cupping, back pressure, side pressure, nothing. I was just having some table practice, and I didn't even know what a top row was, what a hook was, what a press was. All of that was foreign to me. So I've become very familiar with the styles of arm wrestling. Where to put my feet, how to use my strength to my advantage, and acknowledging what my weak points are. I've learned a lot in the last year because maybe you guys haven't noticed, but I really love this sport.
But again, that's just kind of my interpretation of what Larry said. I'm just throwing my 2 cents into the conversation. If you guys have anything that you think I missed, or if you have a perspective you would like to add, feel free to throw it in the comment section below. But that's really all I have to say for this video. So if you're new, remember, I'm not dead yet. Only the strong subscribe. And if you aren't dead either, there is always a tomorrow waiting for you. Oh, actually, I can't believe I almost forgot. I would like to verbally actually thank and shout out all of my Patreon supporters for continuing to support me. Them being Trudy Dyke, Daniel Barrios, Tom Lazoric, and Justin Hightower. Thank you. I know my long form videos, haven't been putting a ton of them out lately. It's been a busy week with school and everything, so your continued support means a lot to me, and it definitely encourages me to keep making videos. So thanks again, but until next time, always a tomorrow waiting for you. And it's good, honestly, to be back behind the camera.